Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. And my co-host today, you might know this comedian from virtual shows. I learned he's been hosting from a shed studio in his yard for the past 3 years. He has an upcoming album called Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League. And also, you can listen to back episodes of his podcast, Improvised Wikipedia, that are available on the usual suspect platforms. Glen Tickle, welcome to the show. What else do the people need to know about you before we get started?
Thank you for having me. And mentioning Improvised Wikipedia, we're on kind of a weird hiatus because scheduling is hard, as I'm sure you both know.
Sometimes you gotta go on a weird podcast hiatus. I have a separate pod. We're on a long hiatus right now. Like, that's just, it's gotta stay a passion pursuit.
It's been off and on over the years, and then during the pandemic, it's just been hard to get together. But it's a real fun show. We rewrite Wikipedia entries without doing any research on them.
You're the chat GPT of Wikipedia entries, just spewing it out into the world, regardless of the sources you link to.
Correct. We don't have editing privileges on Wikipedia. We're not actually defacing any real information.
Of course, yes.
Yet. I mean, we do encourage people to make some updates after listening to the episode.
Encourage the proletariat to get out there and set the record straight, to make information great again.
Right. Like, maybe you just have to put in the Wikipedia entry for cardinals that, like, my mom thinks they're good birds and has a lot of, like, cardinal things in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League. Where in your workshopping, in your crafting, in your, like, putting the material together for a full comedy album, did you realize that was the title you had to go with?
when I made that bad decision? So... I put a special out in 2020 called Good Grief, and in the credits for that, I put watch for Glen Tickle's next adventure, Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League, as a joke, because my favorite movie, not the one we're talking about today, but my favorite movie is The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Oh. And in the end of that movie, they put watch for Buckaroo's next adventure, Buckaroo Banzai Against the World Crime League, but that movie lost so much money and did not live on to a sequel. And so in 2020, I'm like, I'll put that in as a joke for me. Yeah. And then 3 years later, I'm putting a new special together, and it's like, well, I don't have a better name, so I might as well just stick with that one. And then they put that out as a novel.
Promises kept.
Yeah. I put one in the credits for my special that just came out in the credits for that one. It says, watch for Glen Tickle's next adventure, Glen Tickle live in Budapest, which I have no way of making that happen. Like, I don't have any shows booked or contacts or anything. I'm like, I'm just going to call this shot. I'm going to do the next one in Hungary. I was trying to think of, titles for other albums, and I like the idea of putting this wild called shot of, like, I'm going to go perform in a country I've never been to that speaks a different language than I do, that is really hard to learn, and I'm going to try to tell them jokes. I've been trying to learn Hungarian, and I don't think I'm ever going to get it well enough to perform in, but I'm like, a lot of people in Europe are bilingual, and there's English language comedy in Hungary that I'm aware of, so it's like, I can get people to come who will understand what I'm saying, but, like, will they get the jokes? Have they seen Jurassic Park as many times as I would like to talk about it? Like, that's going to be the real challenge, is just cultural references more than language, I think.
I will get to the dad aspect of this conversation. We're going to start with the indie cinema aspect. Could you please tell us the film character that you have brought for us to discuss today?
Yes, I have chosen Mr. Dante Hicks from 1994 classic Clerks.
What? No, I don't work today. I'm playing hockey at 2. Why don't you call Randall? Because I'm fucking tired. I just closed last night. Jesus. What time do you think you're gonna come in? 12? Be there by 12? Swear. Swear you'll be there by 12 and I'll do it.
Now, was it, like, as soon as you picked that, like, the first thing that popped in my mind was, I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
Yeah.
And so does that, like, is that feel thematically resonant for you? Like, at points in your life, just, I wasn't even supposed to be here today. When did you start connecting with Dante Hicks?
Immediately, which is weird because, so that movie came out in 1994. I would have been 11. So I didn't see it until high school. I would also like to just throw out there that I acknowledge that maybe the movie hasn't aged as well as it may have, others might have over the past 30 years. But because I rewatched the Clerks, all of it this weekend, because there's 3 movies now and the animated series, but particularly in the first movie, because I saw it the first time in high school. I was a freshman. One of the seniors who was also in the play I was doing was like, "Have you seen Clerks?" And I was like, "No, I'm a child. I don't know why you think I would." And he's like, "I think you would like it." And I don't know why we didn't know each other that well.
What an interesting read.
It's another comedian, Chris McDevitt. He's a comic out of Philly. We went to high school together. He was a couple years older than me.
Okay.
But for some reason, he sees 14-year-old me, and he's like, "This kid would love Clerks." And so he let me borrow his VHS copy, and I watched it, and I was like, "You're right. I loved Clerks." And it's going to sound like I'm overstating this, but watching Clerks in high school, I think, had a more like direct cause and effect impact on my life than probably anything else I've ever than any like single act. Because
please share, like, how is this true?
So I love the movie, but it's not even about like the quality of the movie itself. It is just, if you asked me at 14 what I wanted to be, I probably would have said writer, but like with no real plan or understanding of like how you make that a job. Just seemed like a thing I would enjoy. I kind of liked the vibe of it. And I've loved movies and comedy my whole life. And when you're 8 and you go see Jurassic Park in the theater, it would be such a wild jump for someone to see Jurassic Park and be like, I'm going to make Jurassic Park. I can do that. I'm going to make some giant...
This feels tangible to me. This could be a career. I'm going to make Jurassic Park.
It's one of those things where it's like, you hear it so many times from people who work in creative fields where like, I didn't realize that this was even a choice until like my mid-20s.
Right.
And I think with film especially, I grew up in New Jersey, and you know, there's film stuff around sometimes, but it's not like I didn't know anybody who worked in movies. And, you know, even though every movie you see has 2,000 names at the end of it of all the people who helped make it happen, you're like, I don't know, movies just happen, I guess. They
just are things that pop out of the ether, and then I have them.
Yeah, then I just watch them 400 times until the tape wears out, and then I have to get another copy of Star Wars. And it's with Clerks though, like you grow up watching Star Wars and Jurassic Park, you're like, movies are great, I love these. And then when I watched Clerks, it was like, oh, you can just do it. You can just I can make Clerks. Yeah. And I've said this to Kevin Smith, so like I know it feels like a dig where I was like, yeah, I can make this movie. But I'm 14,
you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Yeah, because it's like a couple of people in a convenience store. That's what the movie is.
Hey, let me borrow your car.
I don't want to talk to you.
Fine, just let me borrow your car.
Why should I loan you my car?
I want to rent a movie.
You want to rent a movie?
I want to rent a movie. What's that for?
You work in a video store.
I work in a shitty video store. I want to go to a good video store so I can get a good movie.
And he has said the same thing. Kevin Smith has said the same thing about Richard Linklater's Slacker, of like, that's the movie that made him realize that you could just do it.
I had Ty West on the show, and he brought on Peter Jackson's Brain Dead.
Yeah.
I hope I'm remembering that. Might be conflating an early title there, but I think it was Brain Dead. But he talked about that as like, he brought that down as like what he identified with, because he watched that and was like, oh, I can make this.
Yeah.
Like, this is just this guy and his friends. I can run around and film myself trying to break into a car. Like, that's so possible for me.
Yeah. So that's exactly what this was for me. So I think I identified more with Kevin Smith, but like Dante is Kevin Smith's like self-insert character. Like he is who he was at the time. And then the whole thing, it's wild because I don't know if it was because I saw it so early that it had such an impact on me, but like the second I had a job, I was like, I do not like this. I am a miserable employee regardless of what the job is.
Wow.
And like, I love stand-up comedy, but if you told me that like a show was canceled and I could just go home, I'm thrilled. Like I love doing it, but I also love not having to do anything. And so like you said, you know, the line everyone knows, I'm not even supposed to be here today. It's like, yeah, that's how I feel about any job I've ever had. It's like, I don't think I belong at, you know, this position.
You know what the real tragedy about all this is? I'm not even supposed to be here today!
Oh, fuck you! Fuck you, pal! Jesus, there you go, trying to pass the buck. I'm the source of all your misery. Who closed the store to play hockey? Who closed the store to go to a wake? Who tried to win back his ex-girlfriend without even discussing how he felt with his present one? You want to blame somebody? Blame yourself. I'm not even supposed to be here today. You sound like an asshole!
And I went on to work in video stores in high school and college. Mostly, I probably would have done that anyway because I do. Like I said, I grew up watching and loving movies. And the second I found out that if you work at Blockbuster, you can take out 5 movies for free every week, I was like, well, yeah, I'll just go work there. Like that's problem solved.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, that's probably the job I was best at of any like regular person job I've ever had, but it's not around anymore. Like,
yeah, it's just fucking not around anymore.
Yeah, I worked at a Blockbuster in high school, and then I worked at like a small indie video store in college. And
you're a part of history. You're a part of history for that.
Both of them, my favorite thing to do in that job was if it's like busy, they would just have somebody walk around the floor and help people find the movie they're looking for.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't just look it up. You know, you didn't have the internet on your phone. So a big part of my job, because they're like, this kid knows a lot about movies. So Friday and Saturday night, they're like, Glenn, just go walk around, help people find the movie. Because they'd be like, hey, I don't remember the title or anything that happens.
Wow.
Or what year it came out.
You were the living movie database. You were the LMDB.
We had, I think it was Video Hound Guide, was like a printed out IMDb. Yeah. It's like a phone book.
I was going to say, was that the big book? The big book that you guys had?
We had one of those, and that was helpful. But like a lot of times, it was just people were looking for the same 4 or 5 movies. So that kind of like narrows it down. And then it's like,
interesting.
It's usually a Tom Hanks movie. So if you just start listing Tom Hanks movies, that's probably going to cover about 80% of the people. I did like convincing people to rent Magnolia.
Oh my God.
Which is a movie I love.
Did you sell it honestly, or did you trap them?
Both.
Okay.
If someone in my small New Jersey town seemed like they would actually like it, I was always genuinely very happy to like recommend it. And this was while I worked at Blockbuster was the switch from VHS to DVD.
Okay.
So the initial pitch of this was I'm trying to get people to rent a 2-tape set of Magnolia, which is a tough sell on any movie except for Titanic. The second it was a 2-tape release, people were like, absolutely not. As soon as you said
2-tape, I immediately thought of my double VHS of Titanic, yes.
Yeah. So I would talk them into renting this because they would always bring it back immediately and be mad at me. And that was so much fun. Because it's been a while since I've seen it. I don't remember if it's the first scene, but pretty early on, Tom Cruise's character has like a pretty divisive speech.
Oh, yeah. I watched that fairly recently, but I forget when specifically he comes into the movie. But as soon as he enters, I believe he is talking about the power of the cock.
Yeah. And my favorite thing was, because it was on VHS, I could see the moment they paused it and put it out.
Because they did not be kind and rewind?
No, they're not going to rewind a minute and a half. They're just going to bring it back and demand something else. And part of it was like, I do genuinely love that movie, but I understand that like it's challenging to get through. It's very long. It is dense. And you have to watch Tom Cruise yell about cock for a good long time.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I wasn't a great employee. Like, it's probably better that I don't keep doing that. I would also get people to rent the wrong Jack Frost.
Oh my, wait, so like the Michael Keaton
there's a Michael Keaton
one?
family. The dad dies and becomes a magical snowman, and it's heartwarming. And then there's another one where Jack Frost is a monster. And
I think Shannon Elizabeth might be in that movie.
Oh man, I don't know that I've ever actually watched it.
It's a horror movie about a Mr. Frosty creature.
Yeah, so I would just switch them on the shelf like every day.
That's terrorism.
Because no one would check, like
no. Well, you're the one who's supposed to be checking.
Yeah, it's I am just torpedoing any future employment opportunities. When Blockbuster comes back, they are gonna just absolutely not offer me my old job. They're like, no.
Shouts out to me, Shannon Elizabeth, fact check from producer Marissa, is in the Jack Frost creature feature movie.
Well
just
done.
want to make sure that's out there. From 1997, she's reporting through the wires.
I was trying to remember the year. I'm like, that must have been an early Shannon Elizabeth appearance.
Yeah, that's some pre-American Pie Shannon Elizabeth coming on strong. You how many people you set up with that early introduction to Shannon Elizabeth? Who knows? But I'm really
because that wasn't active. That was like passive. I would just when somebody rented one, I would just put them in the wrong spot because it was funny to me. No one's like, do you have that Michael Keaton Snowman movie? I was like, yeah, it's over here in the horror section for some reason. Don't worry about it. Don't worry
about it. Yeah. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
You know that article's accurate? Caitlin really is getting married.
You know what I just watched?
Me pulling a can off some moron's fist?
Return of the Jedi.
Didn't you hear me? Caitlin is really getting married.
What did you like better, Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire.
Blasphemy.
I'm really glad you brought this movie to discuss because obviously, like, it's a classic of its kind. It is so representative of that 90s in an indie cinema explosion where, like, you look back and you watch some of these movies now, you really do see films that are like, wow, I can make movies with friends. Like, if I have something I can hold in my hand that I can shoot, and they're like, that's not something like the movie The Gallows exists now. Like, Blumhouse picked it up. They made it for, a bunch of kids made it for $15,000. I think at their like high school theater, sold it to Blumhouse. Like, not a great movie, but good for them. Ingenuity. Like, and a Sean Baker can make something like Tangerine shooting on an iPhone in Los Angeles. Like, there are ways to bootstrap cinema, but there is less of that tangible, I think, believable feeling that people have where, while the tools to make movies are more ubiquitous and accessible than ever, the idea of making a feature that makes it to Sundance, that it blows you up and creates an institution like Kevin Smith as an auteur force, that path feels like harder to tap into. But so, like, tell me about the power of, like, as much as you worked at a video store, maybe you didn't care about the movies, maybe you love these movies. It sounds like you were the Glen movie database. Right. Tell me about, like, that indie feeling of the 90s where just getting together and kind of creating a little revolution with your buddies and making cinema, like, kind of felt possible at the time. Like, tell me about that era, that attitude.
So I started high school in 1997. And like I said, so that was a couple years after Clerks had been out and was on video and the older kids were aware of it. And then once I got my hand on it, that's when my friends and I, we would like seek out like other indie stuff. Well, like I heard Kevin mention Slacker in an interview, so then I went and watched Slacker, and it's like, this is all like, you can really just get a camera and some friends. So all through high school, I was, making videos and shorts and stuff with my friends, but with no real plan. It wasn't like, oh, we're gonna make a movie. It's like we're gonna screw around with a video camera and make jokes. Like that's what we were doing. But it did. I'm like, well, I'll go to film school and then I'll learn how to do this for real, and then I will make a movie, and then I will get to keep making movies forever.
Yeah.
And that didn't exactly pan out, but
Sure.
I did end up going to school for film. It gave me a reason to like. I was never a great student, but that gave me a reason to want to do well enough in high school that I would get into college. But it also gave me like an idea of what to put effort into in high school. Like if I was taking a class, if it was something I thought would help my eventual film career, I was like trying my best. If I didn't, I would just squeak by with a C and just be fine.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know that Algebra 2 is really going to come up a whole bunch. So like, just tell me what I got to do to pass, and then that'll be the end of it. And so I did. I ended up going to Seton Hall for one semester to study film, because they didn't tell me until I got there. But they're like, oh yeah, you can't check any film equipment out on your own until you're a junior. And it's like, well, why am I here? I don't want to just sit here for 2 years. So I transferred to beautiful Ramapo College of New Jersey because I was visiting my then friend, now wife, who was going there, and we were walking around.
Congratulations on that arc. That's great news.
Thank you. Yeah, it worked out good. But we were walking around the campus, and we walked past the closet that they kept all the film equipment in, and the guy was like checking stuff in from students. I was like, hey, can students check cameras out? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, when? He's like, well, we're open from this time to this time. I'm like, no, like at what point in their education, like what year? He's like, if you're enrolled in any film class, you can check out film cameras. And I was like, I will see you next semester, my guy.
Yeah.
So I left Seton Hall, went to Rampo, and then I think it was 2 weeks after the semester started was when we were allowed to check equipment out. And I had cameras out almost every weekend for the 5.5 years that I spent at that school. And we made mostly kind of the same thing, because like some of my friends from childhood ended up going there too. So we would just keep making dumb videos together. And then, but I started taking it more seriously, and I would do like, I would try to do real art,
Yeah.
And it was around the time, that's early 2000s now. So there's a lot of great indie cinema, kind of like a second or third wave of, people responding to and kind of imitating guys like Kevin Smith or Tarantino was a big one.
I was going to say the Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith boom of
every
influence.
Screenwriting class I took was somebody had some version of a Tarantino movie.
Wow.
Where it's just like, I'm not a big Tarantino fan, so it always like confused me. I was like, why this guy? Like, why? It's not that I don't think he's talented. It's just like, none of this is for me. But like, why is this the thing that my peers are latching onto, and not like Todd Solondz or like somebody else? And every semester it's like, somebody's going to rob the mob by accident. We all get it. How many heads are going in the duffel bag this time, Derek? Like,
wow.
It was all like knockoff mob stuff for a while. And it's like,
you were watching such a class of film bro rise to the ranks at that time. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and it was
rough. And I love Quentin Tarantino, but that shit is rough.
Yeah. It's some of his stuff I do really like, but then when you start seeing just like the bad imitations, it's like,
yeah.
Oof. And that's true of Kevin Smith as well, admittedly. Like, God, the first couple screenplays I turned out in college, I'm sure would be unreadable now. But thankfully, because I found this at 14, like I got a couple bad ones out of my way before I even got to college. And it's like, come on, like try harder. And
well, it's like there's no like, even, many imitators and aspiring successors as Quentin Tarantino birthed, and Kevin Smith did the same. Like, there's a bombast about Tarantino, like the idea of being that big and over the top.
Yeah.
Like I obviously understand the appeal of that, but there's something so important about a Kevin Smith like figure where it truly is just like, no, the guy I see leaning against the wall at a convenience store has the inner life, the desire, the ensemble of people around him to bring something like this to life. It creates inaccessibility. Like you said, you're not watching Star Wars thinking like, I'm going to make a movie. Plenty of kids did. But like for a lot of other people, seeing Dante, seeing Jay, seeing Silent Bob is like, no, that's my pathway into thinking that I can make characters that feel as real to me or as special to me as maybe somebody else is latching on to a Han Solo or to a Mr. Pink.
Yeah. And my one film professor that I had the most in college was this guy named Fred Stripe, and he always hammered home the advice of write for location, like write
Yeah.
with what you have. Like, do you have access to giant dinosaur puppets? No? Then you're not going to make a Jurassic Park when you're in college. You're going to a mid-tier state school in New Jersey. Like, work with what you have. So,
well, I think that's what, like, the Duplass brothers, when they started out, they call it, like, they referred to that as the found materials school of filmmaking. What do you have around you?
Yeah.
Who do you have around you?
We have a puffy chair and some mini DV tapes. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, Baghead. This is John, the short film that kind of catapulted them. Like, just, like, you know, the idea of that, you know, in that tradition of Kevin Smith of just, do you have an idea? That this is John's short film. Like, I think Mark talks about that in hindsight, being like, there's like a dead pixel in the middle of the frame. And it's just a guy who descends into a breakdown while he's leaving an outgoing message for his voicemail. And he suddenly has to figure out who he is condensed into a short time to let people know that they can leave him a message. And now, like, you have them moving on to overall deals with Netflix and HBO and bringing a whole coterie of filmmakers with them. Like, these are miraculous stories of what can feel like the any person director.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, like I said, just as another guy, you know, Kevin Smith is from New Jersey, so I related to him from a really early age, just like, especially hearing him in interviews talk about it. I know there are people who do not like Kevin Smith's work or seem to like him as a person, and I have a harder time defending some of the work. Like, I just rewatched Clerks 2. I'm not going to tell anybody that's an excellent piece of cinema, but the guy just seems so genuinely happy to be getting to do what he wants to do. Yeah. I've only ever heard like stories of him helping like other filmmakers at an early age. And it's like, I don't understand what about him as a person turns people off, but I don't know. He seems nice. I've gotten to meet him a couple times. Has been great, with both interactions. And it's one of those things where it's like, he seems so happy at any given time that this is how life turned out. He's not like, oh, well, this is because I'm incredible. Like you talked about, like the bombast with Tarantino. Even though I like some of Tarantino's movies, there's no one I want to listen to talk about film less, because it is so like, well, here's what I did that was so like original and creative, and it's like, well, I mean, all right, I get, like, calm down. And
yeah, I mean, listen, I love the guy, but he's also like, he's the greatest stitcher together of pastiche that could ever exist. Like, he has plenty of original ideas, but also his thing is homage and like bringing other movies to life in his movies. Like, so okay,
Kevin Smith is just like, isn't it great that I got to make movies with my friends? That's wild. I know Ben Affleck now. Isn't that cool?
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of cool.
It's time for us to take a short break, and I'll be right back with Glenn when I ask him about his other answer to our feeling seen question. Then I will have one quick thing about a nice little fun Halloween movie recommendation you can check out. Let's spread the good news about the good scary movies coming out this season. So stick around.
Hi, I'm Bikram Chatterjee, the CEO of Maximum Fun, and I'm here with my fellow worker owner,
Marissa Flaxbart, producer. This week for Co-Optober, we'll be highlighting other co-ops who work in the arts.
The past few years have been challenging for all kinds of creative industries. We at Max Fun believe that co-ops are better suited to meet these challenges, and there are a lot of other companies who feel the same way.
So all this week on our social media and website, we'll be sharing interviews with some of our fellow co-ops.
And head to our YouTube channel, Friday, October 20th, where I'll be talking with worker owners from Defector and Stocksy about their co-ops and why the model works for them.
And next week is Volunteer Week. Learn how you can participate in that and get details on exclusive merch, our live streams, and other Co-Optober happenings at MaximumFun.org patreon.com/cooptober.
That's COOPTOBER.
All right, class. Tomorrow's exam will cover the science of cosmic rays, the morals of art forgery, and whether or not fish can drown. Any questions? Yes, you in the back.
What is this?
It's the podcast Let's Learn Everything,
where we learn about science and a bit of everything else. My name's Tom. I study cognitive and computer science, but I'll also be your teacher for intermediate emojis.
My name's Caroline, and I did my master's in biodiversity conservation, and I'll be teaching you intro to things the British Museum stole.
My name's Ella. I did a PhD in stem cell biology, so obviously I'll be teaching you the history of fan fiction.
Class meets every other Thursday on Maximum Fun.
So do I still get credit for this?
No.
Obviously not.
No.
It's a podcast.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. Today I'm joined by Glen Tickle, who, in addition to being a comedian, is also a father of two. That detail of his life is going to be pertinent to our conversation in just a second here. Let's get back to it. There's an aspect of this too where, like, a character that you originally presented as someone that you identified with, I feel like this to me kind of parallels the arc of Kevin Smith a bit, where, like, Kevin Smith was, Silent Bob holding up a wall, and then he has this improbable career, and then you have, a movie thrown into it where, like, at a certain point, like, Kevin Smith becomes a dad. And I think of, like, one of Kevin Smith's, like, shouts out to also Red State that Kevin Smith made, which is a white knuckle thriller. That guy has got a range that people don't really talk about that much.
It's so wild.
Red State's actually really good.
I don't really love horror, so, like, when he got into doing that and Tusk, it's like, I'll go see them. Like, I'll absolutely, I'll throw money for a ticket for anything Kevin Smith does. But, I'm like, this is, like, genuinely compelling. And in a way that, like, when I see horror movies...
Melissa Leo is in it? My God.
Yeah. Tusk was pretty weird. That one was kind of rough to get through.
Yeah,
but,
Tusk is a really alienating body horror movie.
Yeah. But again, it was just like, I want to make a weird movie where some guy turns somebody else into a walrus. Because why not? It's like... Go ahead, man.
Yeah. And I like, and I see, like, I align Kevin Smith so much with, like, being a family man kind of at this point. Yeah. He loves to talk about how much he loves his wife. Like, his daughter comes up a bunch, Harley Quinn Smith. In 2016, he made Yoga Hosers, starring Harley Quinn and starring a young Lily Rose Depp. And I don't like that movie, but have been so compelled at points by the notion of tiny Nazi bratwursts as enemies that I have watched that movie at least a half a dozen times. I've sought it out. I've been like, you know what I need? I kind of need to watch Yoga Hosers again, and I don't particularly know why. But I wanted to hear about the other character you presented as an option is the TV character, Bandit the dad from Bluey.
Yes.
Bingo, did you remember your jumper?
I'm at my house. It's 100 miles away from you.
Oh, okay. But did you bring your jumper?
You don't understand. She's too far away to hear you. You have to ring her on the phone.
Ah, all right. Call Bingo. Ring, 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 ring. Ring, 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 ring. Ring, 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 ring. Ring, 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 ring.
Whoop. Hello?
Oh, I'm actually after Bingo.
Oh, you have the wrong number. This is Marjorie.
Sorry, Marjorie. My mistake.
Don't let it happen again. Boop.
So at a certain point, your life and career leans toward, and I've looked, like, you're looking up on your website, and you're like, comic and weird dad, and, like, being a dad. Listen, I like my kids. So, like, tell me about the arc of life where then you start identifying with the TV character dad to like, I don't know, maybe the definitive children's television show of our time, Bluey. Probably. Several of my friends who are parents with, like, little kids now are like, Bluey's raising my children at this point. Like, it's like Daniel Tiger and Bluey are raising my kids.
It's great. I love it so much. And a thing that I connected to, like, somebody recommended it, so we put it on. And my kids liked it, but, like, immediately I was like, this is... I've never seen myself more in a character on TV than Bandit. Because...
What is it about Bandit?
He's trying. I think, honestly, that's what it is. Because so many TV dads are either You are a perfect Danny Tanner. You know, you're keeping the house clean. The kids are all going to school. You know, maybe somebody's friend brings a cigarette home once and you have like a family meeting about it, but everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, you're Coach Taylor.
Yeah. Or you get your Al Bundy, and it's like there's no real middle ground usually. And it's TV dads are usually presented as like bumbling idiots who are essentially one additional child that the mom on the show has to wrangle
completely.
And not that that's not necessarily applicable for me, but Bandit is a good dad, and it is not presented as like a weird thing. It's not unusual. I don't know if that's just because they're Australian, but like the other dads on the show also seem like pretty involved in their kid's life, like they're around. There is one episode where one of Bluey's friends is trying to play a game that she learned from Bluey's dad with her dad, and her dad is just not getting it. Like, he is not that level of fun.
You're gonna love this game, Chloe. How do you play it? Dad, can you explain it?
Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, I'll explain it. Dad's the octopus. That's why he talks like that.
Blah, 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 blah.
And we're fish or something, and we have to steal his treasure and get back to our fish home. Is that all the rules, Dad?
But he like then tries. He's like, well, let me, because the game's called Octopus, if anybody knows the episode I'm talking about. Okay. But he is like a kind of introverted nerd, this other dad. So he goes online and does a bunch of research about octopuses, and then like teaches his kid, and then they just play a different version of the game. And then when this girl goes back to play with Bluey and her dad, then they are like, they have a hybrid version of this game now. And it's like, yeah, like that dad tried. And that's what I don't see a lot in TV. It's like, if you watch Everybody Loves Raymond, he's just like annoyed because the kids are interrupting when he's trying to watch the big game or whatever. I'm like, I've never had that experience. Like, at no point have I been sitting there watching like a sport and thinking like, God, I wish my kids would shut up so I could watch baseball. I have watched competitive chess and tried to get them on board a few times, but never successfully.
I think that's a very fantastic point. And it's not something that like we have explored a lot on this show, which is the notion of just like good, positive, solid dad representation. And I think actually like the Dante to Bandit of Bluey pipeline to me, and then looking at that as a parallel track to the like Kevin Smith, the guy who like puts Dante in as his avatar at a New Jersey convenience store, who like has a day job but wasn't supposed to be there, and you feeling a sense of that echoing in your own life, just like having these day jobs but feeling like it just never fits, the shoe never quite fits. Like, I do think that like I can see why Kevin Smith would really have resonated with you as a young person, because, you know, at your core, you guys are New Jersey dads and you grew into these roles in your life that seem to fit you well where you are. And, you know, I hope you're feeling as happy to be here as Kevin Smith is at this point.
I do know, I've heard of like dads who they're like, I'm not letting my kid watch Bluey because I can't compete with that. And it's like, well, try, you know, but do your best. But I'm sure there are a lot of former Dante's current bandits out there. Okay,
so Glenn, we have Clerks 1 through 3, and we have a Clerks show. We have, what I'm going to tie together is the sort of parallel growth arcs of you and Kevin Smith. We're going to call you the Kevin Smith of your milieu in comedy and fatherhood. So what is, like, as opposed to the Clerks 2 and 3 that turned out in our world that we live in, what is your third Clerks installment as a boy who started as a Dante at just the tender age of like early high school? Mm-hmm. Where is your sort of like Clerks 3 Dante arc taking you to that you hope to explore?
That's a great question. And I think it is how I ended up just kind of doing comedy instead of film, which was, you know, I saw Clerks and I was like, oh, I'm going to go make movies. This is what I want to do. And I made one my last year of college, and then it didn't get bought at Sundance and like launch a career. It like played much smaller festivals, and people told me I did a good job, but then that was about the extent of it. And then I couldn't. I was doing like some freelance video work. I couldn't get hired to write or get anything else I was writing produced. But stand-ups were getting hired for writing gigs, and I was like, well, I know how jokes work, and I don't mind standing in front of people. I will go do that until I get a writing job. And then the second I started doing open mics, I was like, oh, this is really fun. And the immediacy of it, I think, is what grabbed me. Where, you know, if you write a script, it can be literal years before you find out if an audience likes the thing that you're trying to make. Because you have to, you know, you're doing rewrites, you're casting it, you're shooting it, editing it. Maybe you get it into a festival. And
hoping you get financing, trying to get financing. Financing falls through. You find different financing.
Stand-up is just, I can be on stage, have a thought in the moment, say it out loud, and then immediately know if people like it or not. And for a guy with ADD, I'm like, that's unbeatable. Like, there's no competing with the immediate, you know, narcissistic attention I crave of just everyone in the room has to look at me because that's the arrangement. I say my funny little thoughts, and they tell me what a good job I do, and that's all I need. And then, so it was a couple years before. Between when I started stand-up and became a dad, I've been married the whole time. But once my daughter was born, and it was, I think I've told this story before, but it was with past guest Mike Kaplan. I was scheduled to do a show where I was opening for him, and I'd worked with him a couple of times. I'm a huge fan of his, so I canceled every other show that I had around like my daughter's due date, because I'm like, I don't want to have to cancel last minute or like worry about it. So I canceled everything except for this Mike Kaplan show, which ended up being, I think it was like 3 or 4 days after. No, not even. It was like we were still in the hospital. So I go from the hospital to Steel Stacks in Bethlehem to open for Mike Kaplan. And when I get there, I realize like I've actually not put any thought into what I am going to say. I'd been doing it a few years. Like I had material, but I didn't have like a set list or whatever. And I'd been awake for like 2 or 3 days straight. I fainted when my daughter was born. So like at that point, I was awake for a couple days. I'd been in and out of the emergency room. And I was like, yeah, but I still want to go do this show. So I go and I just talked about how tired I was and how it's weird that I had a kid now, and like just talked about how I fainted in the delivery room. And it's not like, I'm not saying the material like crushed, but it did well. And the way that people reacted to it felt different than the way they were reacting to like jokes about my dog or whatever. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, if I talk about my kid, people seem to connect to that, which is great. Because if you've ever met a new parent before, all they want to do is talk about their kid. So it's like, well, I would be talking about my kid either way. It's great that you guys seem to like it. And it gave me,
because you're my hostages now.
Yeah. It's like I'm going to do it. So get on board. It's now, I do that with other things now. In the new special, I have like a pretty long bit about the Great Emu War of 1932. Which is like a thing that happened in Australia. And it's like, well, I thought you guys knew about this, but you don't. So I'm just going to spend 5 minutes and just explain it. And it's that, but with fatherhood for a couple of years. And it gave me, like I said, like a real focus of, you know, before that, it was just, I would sit around and think like, all right, what are audiences going to think is funny? Like, what should I write jokes about that like people will like? And then once I had a kid, it's like, I'll just talk about this. Like, this is all I'm thinking about now anyway. And I will make it the audience's problem. But thankfully it worked out. And it has been like enough of my material over the years has been like about my kids and being a father that it's like, well, yeah, it does feel weird to not kind of acknowledge it at like a brand level, which feels gross to say. But I do a lot of colleges. And when I started doing them, my daughter was like 2 or 3, I think, the first time I went and did like an APCA event. And I did my showcase, and then like other like college agents and stuff were like, "Oh man, you blew it. Like you can't talk about being married or having kids at colleges because like students aren't going to know what you're talking about." And I'm like, right, but they are probably familiar, like they're aware of basic familial relationships, and I'm willing to bet
they have that understanding.
Some of them have like seen a child before. Like I think it'll be fine. Because my jokes aren't like, I don't think you need to be a parent to understand that parents or that kids are weird and sometimes scary, which is like a lot of what my material is. It's like, oh, this weird thing happened and I happened to be doing like a dad thing at the time. Like I have a joke about potty training my toddler where it's like, yeah, it's a fun story. Like you don't have to have potty trained a toddler to understand, that it's weird when you're trying to like make that deal with them of like, what do I have to give you to get you to cooperate with this? And it's one of those things where it's like, well, agents were telling me that, and I just did it anyway. And then I started booking a ton of colleges, and it's like, I don't think the lesson is that if you want to do colleges, start talking about your kids. But, I've always been pretty into just talking about or doing what I want to be talking about or doing, which is why I'm a bad employee. Like that is where it's just like, oh, can you go restock the shelves? I don't feel like it, so no. But if it's like, hey, can you drive to Nashville to tell 100 people jokes about your wife and the chickens that she adopted during the pandemic? I was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. I'll go do that all day long.
I think what you've managed to do, Glenn, is you exist in the great tradition of comics and filmmakers and screenwriters alike, Oscar-winning ones even, who take their experiences or their neuroses or their problems or their circumstances, and they do make them the problem of the audience. Yeah. So that just puts you in a pantheon of greats.
I appreciate it, but it is like, I don't know that I can do it another way, where the times that I've tried to write even stand-up material, but like scripts or anything, if it doesn't feel like, if it's not based on personal experience, then I lose interest almost immediately. Where even if it is like, I have a animation pilot that I've been working on where it's like, it's set in the future, there's aliens, and it's like, I don't have future alien experience, but like other than that, like it is like very personal, and it is just like, yeah, like this is my experience as a dad, but if that dad was in the future and there were aliens around. And it's like, if I got hired to just be like, hey, can you write this alien show? And I would immediately just try to figure out a way to insert myself into the show and like make it more relatable to me specifically, which, as I've found out from internet comments, not everyone enjoys. But, you can't aim for everybody.
Well, I would just want to thank you for taking the time to make us a part of your personal experience, Glenn.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Appreciate
You've been a delight.
That you have come on and talked to us today about, a real gap in the feeling scene coverage, which is just dads who are out here doing everything they can.
Yeah, I'm trying my best, just like Bandit.
Thank you so much to Glen Tickle. His new special, Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League, you know it and you love it, is out now. We will put a link in the show notes to that and to Glen's website, where you can find out everything else he has going on. And now, that one quick thing before I go, there is a delightful little horror movie that is streaming on Amazon Prime and that is directed by Nanachka Khan called Totally Killer. And I highly recommend you watch it this Halloween. It started and I was like, this is okay, guys, but we did the Final Girls. Like we did the travel back in time to kill the killer, to save the mom kind of thing. Like that has happened. Am I am I seeing this correctly? Like, it just, there was some flashbacking, there was some deja vuing. So I will say, like, when this started, like, I was immediately having a good time. It was kicky, it was moving along. It stars Kiernan Shipka as a high school girl whose, mother dies at the hands of a serial killer, and she then finds a way to go back in time so she can go back to her mother's youth to stop a series of events that kicks off in the 1980s that it will eventually lead to her death decades later when Kiernan's Jamie Hughes is a teen. But listen. If you've seen The Final Girls and the movie starts immediately feeling familiar to you, don't worry about it. They've got it. They've got everything in hand. I had a blast with this movie. I was laughing out loud. The fish out of water, the fish out of water element of comedy can be really a hard line to toe because it's like, listen, are we going to beat this drum over and over again? Are these jokes going to start to feel hacky? But like the Jamie Hughes in the 80s as a child of like 2022, 2023 Gen Zer works the whole time. The jokes are great. Baby looks so forward to a version of The Final Girls that exists when some teenager has to go back in time to the era that I grew up in the 2000s, so they can make a bunch of horrified jokes about how fucked up that era was. I was like, oh my god, I'm looking forward to this now. I can't wait till my era gets skewered in a horror comedy about a girl going back in time to save her mom from being murdered. It's got some good spooky scares. It's got great kills. The kills are not screwing around in this movie. That the Sweet 16 killer is going hard at people. The 80s fashions are great. This movie is a really fun time. It's a really good self-referential horror. It's a really good horror comedy. It works. It's clicking on all cylinders. Yeah, I'm a fan. And that is just a simple recommendation that I can give to you about a way that you can have a fun time this Halloween. So plan a movie night and put on Totally Killer. Great job to all involved. Honestly, I think it's my favorite thing Kiernan Shipka's ever done. So, snaps to everybody. And that is our show. You can follow us on Twitter at FeelingSeenPod, or you can send us an email at feelingseen@maximumfun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm Jorcru on Twitter, which is JORCRU. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.